존경하는 전광우 세계
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank first Dr. Jeong-Kwang-woo, Chairman of IGE, and Jung Hae-yong, Deputy Mayor of Economics at Daegu Metropolitan City, and Kim Tae-ho, CEO of DGB Financial Group. I'm also grateful for the presence of so many people who have joined today's event, both online and offline, including Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel Economic Laureates. Thank you for you all, and it is a great privilege to be invited to deliver a congratulatory note and special lecture today. I have been told, and I've been given 20 minutes, and with your understanding, I will take off my mask during my speech. I am far away enough from you. So I'm not violating social distancing rules, and IGE and DGB Financial Group have co-hosted this international conference. I'd like to join you in congratulating this special occasion. And I would also like to congratulate the 10th anniversary of the founding of DGB Financial Group, which I have no doubt will achieve even more impressive and outstanding success going forward. And in November last year, I also joined the 2020 ESG Global Summit held by IGE. I was invited to that conference and delivered a speech, and I'm grateful to be with you once again at a conference hosted by IGE, and our topic is toward a new financial horizon, challenges and opportunities for ESG and digital transformation. And my topic today is the relationship between climate change and ESG. In line with the theme of our conference today, climate change is close to us, not just large global institutions, but ordinary people, to everyone. And the financial sector is not immune from the impact of climate change. Indeed, climate change is bringing important changes to all industries, to everyone. So responding to climate change and realigning our industries to carry out ESG management is a very important task. And humanity is fighting against the COVID-19 pandemic, and we are gathering our resources to defeat the pandemic, but we are still far away from leaving COVID-19 behind, and COVID-19 may be joined by other challenges down the road, including climate change or crisis created by climate change. Climate change may be a mixed blessing. It has both challenges but also brought opportunities, or for better or for worse. COVID-19 is one of the biggest topics currently, and I think it will be so in the coming years. Adopting SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, were adopted when I was Secretary General of United Nations, and the Paris Agreement was signed by countries in 2015. And when I was Secretary General of the United Nations, I talked with global leaders, and I shared my ideas on the Paris climate change and responding to climate change. And I would like to share an anecdote which I am not particularly proud about. I first served as Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs during Kim Dae-jung administration. At the time, a Sustainable Act was took into effect during that time. And as a Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, I was shocked to discover myself that I was unaware of the term or concept of sustainable development. So I tried to translate that into Korean 지속 가능 발전, and Ministry of Strategy and Finance was in overall charge of managing ESG goals at the time. And time passed, and in 2007, I inaugurated as Secretary General of the United Nations, by which time SDG or sustainable growth has become a topic of the town. And MDG, Millennium Development Goal, was also an important topic. And in 1987, a Brundtland Commission first came up with the idea of promoting sustainable growth. So Korea was 13 years late in embracing a sustainable growth. And it took 15 years. And fast forward 15 years later, now we are seeing the mainstreaming of ESG. So these are the latest global trends on sustainable development and ESG. I think we are in the right direction. And since the late 18th century, since the advent of the industrialization, human civilization has seen important advancements in technologies and industries. But amidst such impressive achievements, we have also witnessed wanton environmental destruction and large-scale carbon emission, resulting in creating greenhouse gas effects and many effects arising out of climate change. So climate change is posing an existential challenge to human civilization. Environmental destruction destroyed habitat occupied by animals, putting animals and humans into contact for the first time in history. And as a result, humans were infected by diseases transmitted by animals. And in 2003, the SARS outbreak created havoc around the world. It was a source of very lot of concern at the time. So 18 years have passed since then. And from 2013 and for the past 19 years, we saw the rise and fall of many epidemics. Sometimes we were unaware or not very cognizant of them. In 1918, the Spanish flu outbreak killed many people. It reduced the population in Europe by 1/3. So that was a wholesale destruction brought by Spanish flu. And we had a quiet 50 years, a half a century, and in 1968, Hong Kong flu broke out. Many of you may not remember that, but that claimed many lives at the time. And from 1968 to about 2001 or 2011, in 2003, the severe acute respiratory syndrome created a lot of challenges around the world. So in 2003, in 1 to 2 or 3 year intervals, we have seen a continuous outbreak of epidemics. Epidemics with global proportions. For example, in 2008, H1N1 influenza broke out, and that was the first epidemic that I saw as a sitting Secretary General of UN. And in 2011, a new influenza broke out. It was not recognized as a global pandemic by the Korean people, but it was a different matter to other countries. And the MERS broke out in 2013, which led to significant losses in lives which created quite a shock in Korea. And MERS outbreak in 2013 in Korea sent a very strong message to Koreans that we should rise to the challenge. And the Center for Disease Control was created at the time in Korea. And in 2014, when I was a sitting UN Secretary General, Ebola outbreak disrupted the livelihood and lives of many people in sub-Saharan Africa. It killed 45%, and it had a fatality rate of 45%. COVID-19 has a mortality rate of about 2.4%, which mercifully, and the fatality in COVID-19 in Korea was less than 1%. And the Zika virus on the eve of the Rio Olympic broke out in Africa, raising serious concern whether the Rio Olympic should be held or not. A problem of which was not recognized or taken seriously by many Koreans. The COVID-19 pandemic put the entire world into a lockdown, and it created havoc and fears among almost everyone on our planet. However, we humans are responsible for the COVID-19 outbreak because these viruses have one thing in common. And they are zoonotic diseases, which means that they are transmitted from animals to human beings. So the destruction of animal habitats has been responsible for this viral infection.
거기에 대응을 하지 못했고
And failure to adequately respond to climate change, address the destruction of animal habitat resulted in the COVID-19 pandemic, among other virus outbreaks. And COVID-19 is leading to extreme weather events around the world. And in July and August, Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany, all of which are advanced countries with high income levels in Europe, incurred significant losses by a large-scale flood, the largest of its kind in almost 1,000 years. Australia and the United States also, on their part, suffered large-scale wildlife, and the western part of the United States and Australia, or the landmass of Australia and the United States, were devastated by wildfire, and Lebanon, Greece, and Turkey also suffered from the loss incurred by extreme weather events. And Dominican Republic is a small island country in the Caribbean, and in 2018, the Dominican Republic was swept over by a cyclone, which disrupted, incurred economic loss worth 2.5 times the country's entire GDP. Greenhouse gas emissions, climate change issues are creating a lot of problems. When I was in school, the coldest part in the world, or I was taught in my school that the coldest country or part of the world was a city of Verkhoyansk in Russia. So it has the lowest temperature on record in the world, and in 1862 it had a temperature, it recorded a temperature of minus 68 degrees Celsius, which dropped, and that temperature, however, the lowest temperature in the world for the year in Verkhoyansk was minus 49 degrees Celsius recently. And during July, shockingly, the highest temperature was 48 degrees Celsius positive. So there was a very large difference or fluctuation in a temperature, or 100 degrees Celsius temperature rise in the 10th century, and that is enough to boil water. And I have been almost all part of the world which have been impacted by climate change. As Secretary General of the United Nations, I visited Antarctica and the Arctic as many as 5 times. And I also visited the Sejong Research Institute and Dasan Research Institute 5 times. I think I'm the only Korean to visit as many times Arctic and Antarctic. I visited Greenland. And the size of melting ice was worth, or the volume of melting ice, or the weight of melting ice was worth dozens of billions of tons. And that is enough to occupy the land mass of 1 million square kilometers with 150 kilometers thickness. And if that very, very large chunk of ice melts down in Greenland and in Antarctic, that might result in the rise of a sea level from 63 centimeters to 3 meters or even 4 meters, in which case Korea, South Korea, Shanghai, New York, and other cities or countries might be underwater, making a large chunks of land uninhabitable. So this is indeed a very serious challenge. For the past 10,000 years, for the period of past 10,000 years was defined as Holocene by geologists. And the Holocene, or the age of geology, might witness an important change brought by human beings. So Anthropocene, or the era of human civilization, age of humans, may be with us, or we may be witnessing the start of Anthropocene, or the age of humans, and in the next coming century, we might see the sixth large-scale or catastrophic extinction on our planet. 65 million years ago, there was the fifth mass extinction on our planet, which killed almost dinosaurs and a lot of creatures on our planet. The fifth extinction brought into extinction about 70% of fauna and flora, and the sixth mass extinction may be a real possibility in the next 100 years. So our great-great-grandchildren might question whether human civilization might exist at all, because the geological changes brought by climate change may pose existential threat 100 years hence. So climate change, or responding to climate change, should be our utmost priority. Otherwise, the future of our planet and human civilization might be in serious doubt. And during my 10 years as Secretary General of the United Nations, I am proud to say I have been very committed to responding to climate change. In 2007, the incumbent president at the time was President Bush, and a lot of people at the time were skeptical on the impact of climate change. And President Trump did not take climate change seriously either, and the United States walked out from the Paris Climate Agreement, and the United States and it is very encouraging that the Biden administration, however, decided to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement, which is a tree-like bounding agreement. Many international agreements are binding, some of them are not. For example, Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them in all, are not like treaties, which means they are not enforceable, they are not binding. However, the 13th SDG of climate change, goals on climate change, are enforceable, they are binding, reflecting the importance of responding to climate change. So the 13th goal, 13th SDG, were carved out as a standalone topic to be the topic of negotiation of 170 countries. So 170 countries have signed up for the Paris Climate Agreement. So Paris Climate Agreement, which is the growth of 13th SDG, is binding and enforceable, and we are seeing many reports pointing to the seriousness of climate change. In 2015, when I was Secretary General of UN, the Paris Climate Agreement was signed, and at the time, the global rise in temperature must be kept below 2 degrees Celsius by 2030. That was 2050. That was a pledge made at the time, and ideally, arresting the climate temperature rise by 1.5 degrees would be even better. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, an independent organization within the UN, urged the world that the temperature rise must not be higher than 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that was an announcement made in 2018, and fast forward to 3 years later, in August 2021, we have already, the global temperature has already risen by 1.1 degrees Celsius, leaving only 0.4 degrees Celsius rise before we reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius rise. So we have used our carbon budget initially allocated up until 2016, and we have used that up, almost all of them by this time. So the date at which we should achieve a carbon neutrality has been moved forward as by necessity from 2060 to 2050 to 2040. So we have only 0.4 degrees Celsius rise left before we arrest the global temperature rise by 1.5 degrees Celsius. So 2050 should be the year by which we should achieve net zero carbon. And that was a recommendation issued by the IPCC, and 132 countries pledged themselves that they would be carbon neutral. And President Moon Jae-in of Republic of Korea joined in this endeavor in line with a changing understanding on the seriousness of climate change. And in October 20th last year, it made a very bold decision to make Korea carbon neutral by 2050. And he made that announcement, made that pledge in G7 among other international conferences, and the relevant law was passed at the National Assembly this year. And we had set up a midpoint goal of reducing our carbon emissions by 35% by 2030, which was raised to later on, however, 40%. And 45% reduction was recommended by the international community to Korea. So we are slightly falling short of the desirable level. But the fact that we have passed relevant legislation under President's guidance and urging, and the commitment has been signed by both legislative and administrative branch, are very welcome developments on the part of Korea. And this caused, however, such more stringent commitment create quite a stir in the business community because reducing our carbon emission by 40% by 2030 led to a lot of backlash or opposition on the part of businesses. There was even calling for the abolition of this pledge. So this is not an easy task. Achieving carbon neutrality is very challenging. So President last week presided over the Carbon Neutrality Commission, and he will be present for the G20 summit and COP26 Glasgow summit, and that 40% reduction pledge and 2050 carbon neutrality commitment will be announced once again by President Moon Jae-in. So to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 involves a lot of endeavors and a lot of commitments. Achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 involves a reduction of carbon emission by 70 percentage points every year till 2050. And we did reduce the carbon emission last year in 2020, which may be a one-time event because COVID-19 disrupted almost all business operations, including travel and industrial operations. Hence, the 77% reduction in CO2 emissions. And what about 2021? Or from 2021 to 2050, can we achieve 7 percentage points carbon emission reduction every year? Can we rise to the challenge? This is an epochal and unprecedented transition and a completely new business. And we should completely new business model and strong citizen participation are required. I am mindful, of course, aware of the challenges this might pose to businesses. And POSCO is the largest emitter of CO2 in Korea. It accounts for 12% of CO2 emission in Korea. And I visited POSCO steelmaker twice. And I met many business leaders, including business leaders from Hyundai Motors. And after 2030, Hyundai Motors declared itself it will no longer produce internal combustion engines. It will make only hydrogen vehicles and electric vehicles. And POSCO made a similarly a bold decision to completely halt CO2 emission by 2050 by making a transition to a hydrogen-oriented facility by 2050. So that is a very encouraging development. Many companies, including SK, Samsung, Hanwha, among other leading firms in Korea, are taking a renewed interest in renewable energy. So they pledged. They have joined RE100 or renewable energy 100%, which means that 100% of energy of production will come from renewable sources. And RE100, like ESG, is rising as a worldwide trend, which means that the Korean businesses have no option but to join in this trend. So, if we continue to produce internal combustion engine vehicles after 2030, then we may find no willing buyers of our fossil fuel vehicles. EU pledged that by 2030 or 2035 at the very latest, that it will introduce carbon border management mechanism or CBOM. So that was an announcement made by the EU introducing CBOM by 2030, which means that our fossil fuel vehicles, even if we make them after 2030, will have no buyers. And the carbon adjustment mechanism might be introduced by the United States, or at least according to the government's latest announcement. The carbon neutral committee in Korea has been launched, and it has faced many brick walls and challenges. But I would like to point out that if we want to be carbon neutral by 2050, we should think about improving our energy efficiency, raising the efficiency of our energy mix, which entails, among other things, reducing our use of gasoline, LNG, and LNG mix involves a lot of sources of energy: renewable energy, nuclear energy, and fossil fuel energy, including coal, oil, and gas. And carbon neutrality commission said that the proportion of nuclear power in Korea will be reduced from 29% to 6%, and renewable energy will take up 6.6% to 60 to 70% in the coming years, in the coming decades. This is a very audacious proposition. However, I'm not sure, I'm skeptical whether this is very feasible. It requires very close scrutiny. And I was a foreign service officer. During my time as a foreign service officer, I had a chance to study the nuclear industry, meet many leaders in the nuclear community, and as Secretary General of the UN, I was also able to see nuclear power plants firsthand. I even personally visited the site of nuclear disasters. And there is a misunderstanding on nuclear energy, one of which is that they are quite hazardous. However, technological development in the 21st century made nuclear energy much safer. We had 2 nuclear disasters in Chernobyl, Soviet Union, and 3 Mile Island in the United States. So we had 2 large-scale nuclear disasters. And the largest and the bigger of the 2 is the Chernobyl disaster. And I visited Chernobyl and Fukushima, a nuclear power plant in Japan, and it is not a disaster it was not a disaster resulting from the malfunction of the nuclear power plant, but the destruction brought by tsunami. So all of these cases should drive us to make nuclear energy safer so that nuclear energy can be part of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. So nuclear energy must be part of the solution. And the president of the public company in charge of managing nuclear power plants in Korea made a testimony at the National Assembly and said that he made a very bold pronouncement that we should increase the proportion of nuclear energy. And that was a very courageous remark, because the president said that we should move away from nuclear energy. because completely phasing out nuclear power in Korea may not be a very realistic proposition. So this is a nationwide challenge or problem that we must take interest. Bill Gates said as much that nuclear energy is the safest, most efficient form of energy source. And the small modular reactor is getting investment from the Bill Gates Foundation. And carbon neutrality commission and the policy proposals made by the government must be joined by very strong commitments to achieving carbon neutrality. And from October 30 to November 20, a COP26 conference of Party 26 will be held in Glasgow, UK. And in May, in Korea, the president presided over the P4G summit, at which he set out our carbon neutrality commitment to be achieved by year 2035, and we should be more ambitious. We should raise our level of reduction from the previous 40% to 45%. A task, however, that I think would be handled by the next administration, not the Moon Jae-in administration. Carbon Neutrality Commission must redouble its efforts to engage business and political leaders and each and every citizen to convince them of the importance of making ourselves net zero. And carbon neutrality commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 requires strong participation of the business community. And I just talked about RE100, SK, POSCO, Hyundai Motors, Lotte, and Samsung Construction and Engineering among 12 leading Korean businesses signed up for Korea H2 or launched official announced the Korea H2 Business Summit. And the Korea H2 Business Summit is only the latest development of the mainstreaming of carbon neutrality in Korea, or the mainstreaming of ESG management in Korea. And the rise of ESG has become a prevalent trend not just in Korea, but in other countries around the world. ESG management, simply put, means looking not just at financial metrics or return on investment, but also looking at environmental, social, and governance implications of business management, so that businesses could be more sustainable. And as we stand, ESG management is no longer an option. It has become an imperative. So this is not an either-or position. We must embrace ESG, corporate social responsibility, or CSV, corporate social value, had ended as a one-off fad, but we should not. ESG should not meet the same fate. ESG should be more relevant, more ubiquitous among us. And principle of responsible investment, or investment aligned with PRI, is growing in size, and by 2030, the asset under management managed under ESG criteria will be will take 90% of $140.5 trillion of asset under management. So most money will flow into ESG management or ESG portfolios. And in Korea, 50% of assets under management in Korea must be directed towards ESG savvy companies. This was announcements made in Korea, and failure to take up the ESG mantle would turn away global investors. They might even withdraw their investment from Korea. The Netherlands Pension Fund, one of the 3 largest pension funds in Korea, declared that it is opposed to the investments made by Korea Electric Power and withdrew its investment in those companies. So this is just one of the trends showing a very strong commitment to ESG management and getting towards the net zero milestone, distinguished guests. Climate change is posing existential threats to us. Our fate depends upon how well we respond to the climate change. We should listen to the voices of nature. It is not a matter of compromise. And I had an audience with the Pope several years ago, and he said to me that it is a God to forgive. And God and human beings occasionally forgive. And God always forgives, but nature never forgives. So that came very close to me, and that the remarks of the Pope should remove our commitment to practice ESG management, ESG mandate in every part of our public and private lives. And therein lies the way to leave our next generation with a better planet. And it is the surest way to make a happier and more prosperous and healthier world. That is the ethical and a political mandate entrusted on us, and it is a collective endeavor requiring the commitment of everyone. So each and every one of us should be part of this journey and audacious cause.